are going to transition into our keynote panelist discussion for this afternoon. So my name is Malachi Fleming. I serve as the Barker Center Undergraduate Fellow. I have the honor and privilege to introduce our moderator for this panelist discussion, Dr. Sheldon Wrice. So as the University of Akron's Chief Diversity Officer, Dr. Wrice provides strategic leadership for campus diversity, program oversight, diversity advising, and mentoring. Wrice has taught full-time at the university since 1995 as a professor of technical writing and composition, while also chairing a variety of academic departments, including modern language, anthropology, classic studies, and English and associate studies. Wrice earned his doctorate of education in higher education administration in 1995, Masters of Science and Technical Education, and Masters of Arts in Multicultural Education in 1994, Masters of Arts in Urban Studies in 2013, and Masters of Public Administration in 2004, all from the University of Akron, so go Zips. During his time, he has presented at over 50 regional, national, and international conferences, and served on many professional organization boards, including serving on the H. Kenneth Barker Center Board of Advisors since 2021. So I want you to help me in welcoming Dr. Sheldon Wrice. During the panelist discussion, make sure you think of questions. At the end, we're going to have take a few questions from the audience. Dr. Wrice.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Are you all enjoying yourselves? Yes. Has this conference been wonderful so far? Yes. I think I would be remiss, and I think all of you should join me in having organized and put on several conferences before. I know what it takes. I know the energy, the work, the time, and I want you to join me in saluting Dr. Magooth for the great work that he has done. Please. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. Yeah, because that would have been a disaster. Yes. So thank you. Yeah. I'm going to sit down before I knock this off. Okay. I am so honored to be here today with this distinguished group of panelists, and we're going to get started in a few minutes. I'm going to just sit down and grab the other mic. I don't know why they have me sitting up so high, but I'll take it and seize the moment. This is indeed an honor. As you know, that this particular session is entitled Why Financial Literacy Matters for Equity and Inclusion. And as I said, we have a very distinguished panel. And I'll just introduce their names by name and then allow them to eventually tell a little bit about themselves. But first, we have to my right, your left, Ms. Kim Murphy, Vice President of Park Edge Advisors, LLC. Sharron Murphy-Williams, Director of Phoebe Foundation. Enjoyed having both of these two young ladies sit with me at lunch today, so thank you for letting me break bread with you today. Mr. Adam Motter, pronounced correctly? Okay. Social Studies Learning Specialist, Akron Public Schools. And of course, my distant cousin. I call her my distant cousin. She had an aunt who was a professor in the College of Ed. I don't know if you knew that, Brad, who was one of my major professors when I was a graduate school here, and she fed me and I hung around like a cat, so I still hang around her house when I'm here for holidays. So Miss Felicia McMiller, who is a business education teacher at Bedford High School. So we'll get started. So my first question is to all of the panelists. Can each of you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work you do, but also, why does the topic of equity and financial literacy resonate with each of you? And we'll start with you tonight.
Okay. Can you hear me? Great. Good afternoon. My name is Kim Murphy. I am Director of Financial Planning and Vice President of Park Edge Advisors, a small registered investment advisory firm in Cleveland. I've been a financial planner for almost 30 years and have my CFP, my undergrad, believe it or not, was in financial planning way back then. They did it, which was a little odd at the time. I have an MBA and then a Master's of Science in Financial I'm also an adjunct professor at John Carroll and sometimes at Akron, teaching in the financial planning department as well as teaching personal finance or financial literacy. And then part two, why it resonates with me. So I think I know my answer to this is going to be very different than the rest of the panel. As a financial planner, I work really hard to help clients meet their financial goals. And typically the biggest goal is going to be retirement. And there's lots of research and data and different numbers out there about how unprepared, woefully unprepared we are as a society for retirement. But the latest one I just read yesterday was that the average American will have $250,000 saved for retirement when they retire. So if you think about that, let's just say you're spending $50,000 a year, and we're not going to talk about Social Security and taxes on any of that stuff, but you are funding your retirement from the age of 65 to 70, and you're going to live well into your 80s. So it is a major problem, and I know that we're teaching younger kids, and when you say, let's say for retirement, they look at you like you have 3 heads, but the concept is the same. Whether you're saving for the new iPhone that's coming out, you're going to look at what you have to save, what you're bringing in, what you can save each month towards that. If you're buying a car, if you're putting a down payment on your house, the concept is the same. So teaching that concept early and kind of ingraining that in them is going to help with some of the goals they'll have later on.
Now, I'm going to have a follow-up question on that one because you have me. So what if that money was saved up through an annuity?
Okay.
So if aside from a traditional bank, a savings account, so would that also be applicable?
Yeah, so an annuity, depending on what you kind of say with an annuity. First of all, this is a room full of mostly teachers, so you have a type of annuity in terms of you have a defined benefit pension plan that will likely pay out some sort of monthly annuity. And so and know that that's really special. That's really amazing. We've gotten away from defined benefit pension plans in the private sector. So most of us are saving for our own retirement through a defined contribution plan or a 401k or something like that. So that's really, it's amazing. Now, for those of us who don't have annuities built into our retirement plans as educators or firefighters, we can go out and buy annuities in the market. And those are typically insurance type products where you either pay in a certain amount over a period of time or as a lump sum, and then you get paid a monthly income stream from the annuity over time. A great tool to help people that don't have that annuity stream from their work.
Great, thank you.
Am I answering the same question?
Yes, all of you will
All right.
answer that.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sharron Murphy-Williams. I'm a licensed credit strategist. But I'm a 22-year in the building, stomping the halls educator all around financial literacy in the CMSD schools. South Euclid schools is where I pretty much had my platform. But my background is Dun & Bradstreet. I also am a consultant for the IRS. So do I do collections? Very well. But I'm a consumer. I'm a corporate collector, not a consumer's collector. So I won't call you. But the wonderful thing about teaching financial education is when I put on all of the hats that I wear, I can educate to the barriers for my students to prevent. And so why do I find it equitably necessary? Because for 22 years I have taught financial education, and I'm just one. And I know that there are many that have. But there are so many classes that have graduated that financial literacy was not their core competence. They don't know how. And so we turn into adults trying to fight or combat what we didn't know while we have to adult. And so the equity for me is get them young so that our early on years are not as hard. We know how to make a little bit better, more sound decisions. So equity just to me means fair. If we even the playing field around money, could you imagine where each of us could find our own place to land? So that's me.
Excellent.
Not the sharing, I'm not in sharing mode. Hi, everybody. My name is Adam Motter. I am the Social Studies and PE Curriculum Specialist for the Akron Public Schools. Prior to that, I was a Social Studies teacher. I am also the Executive Director of the Ohio Council for the Social Studies. So just a quick plug for the Social Studies teachers in the room. It's worth going, and it's a whopping $30 a year, but you get a lot out of it. Why is equity and financial literacy important to me? You know, the goal of social studies really is about preparing our students to be successful citizens. And obviously, financial literacy has an important place in that. And many of us in this room might even make the argument that the skills required to be a successful citizen today are even harder than they've been in the past. For me, in the Akron Public Schools, a lot of our students have different life experiences than we had. I mean, I look on this panel. I win the prize as the most privileged person on this stage. And if I've insulted your sensibilities, replace the word privilege with advantage. I have been more advantaged. I grew up in a household that was, middle class household. Education was valued. Our expectations were set. Got lots of chances. Our students in the Akron Public Schools come from lots of different life experiences. We need to ensure that as we teach them financial literacy and the components of financial literacy, they can see themselves in the curriculum, see their future in the curriculum. All students. And so that is something I'm very passionate about. And I'm also very excited for our future. Jackie and I were talking at the break, and the fact that every student in Ohio is going to get this opportunity. How do we make sure that every student has what they need to be successful as they move their journey forward? That's what equity is really about. And that's what that's not just a challenge. That's something that's exciting and work that's worthy of our efforts.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Felicia McMiller. I teach at Bedford High School. I'm a business teacher or business educator. I've been teaching business education for 28 years. I also started the personal finance course at my high school over 20 years ago. I'm the membership chairperson of Ohio Business Educators of America. And so we found out that financial literacy was a course that was needed 20 years ago. And this organization of business teachers, we advocated, we wrote letters, we met with senators to help get this bill passed. And so we're so happy and excited about financial literacy being taught in all of the schools in the state of Ohio. as you can tell, I am very passionate about financial literacy. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years with my students, and I am teaching students that are middle class and maybe lower class levels, so many of our students do not save. They're learning their money habits from their families, which I understand because I learned from my family. I learned from my parents. And some of the skills that they're learning may not be the best skills. Okay, they may, like for example, there was a student that I was working with yesterday at a summer camp here in Akron, and he said, "Oh, we'll just take all our money and put it under the mattress." And so, you know, you have to go to where the kids are at with their frame of mind and show them that there's other ways in which you can make money, how to use your money, how to invest your money, how to grow your money. And so that's one of the things that I want my students to be able to take with them when they're done taking my class.
Thank you. When you said that, I immediately thought, all of you've heard of James Brown, I'm sure. When James Brown died, he lived in, I'm originally from South Carolina, and he was in Augusta, South Carolina. And Augusta, Georgia, Augusta, South Carolina, it's borderline. And his kids dug up the whole backyard because James Brown didn't believe in banks. He buried money in his yard. And they were trying to find where was this money buried. So I thought about that when you said that, about putting it in the mattress. So that's what James Brown believed in that. My next question, I'm going to go with to the two Murphy sisters, I'm going to call them, since they dine with me today. How about that? As an increasing number of states, including Ohio, mandate the completion of a personal finance course for high school graduation, research suggests that a poorly targeted financial literacy course, especially one that is not culturally responsive, can actually be detrimental to the long-term financial outcome of youth. What advice might you offer to educators here today to ensure they deliver culturally competent, strong financial literacy instruction?
Okay, so a couple things. I think, is it still on? Yeah. I think knowing your audience is always important, but especially in this case. So depending on where you are, understanding where the kids are coming from, and Felicia said it beautifully, that the kids right now are learning financial literacy from their parents, and if their parents are anything like mine, they're learning everything the wrong way. And so, first of all, I think it's really important for kids to understand that there's no shame in their friend's parents being more successful or owning a home and they don't, or that financial literacy is a skill like reading and writing, and we have done a horrible job in our country of teaching that skill, and so we're fixing that now with their generation, and so let's start there. Let's not worry about what's happened with our parents and what we're learning from that, and then knowing resources. So there's a lot of unbanked and underbanked people in our community, in our communities, I should say. And so knowing resources around that, there's second chance banks and banking programs out there. A lot of credit unions will allow for bank accounts to be opened without going through the check system that most larger banks require. So knowing those resources, partnering with, I think, Junior Achievement. Do we have anybody from Junior Achievement here? They're amazing, literally amazing. And the resources that are available through Junior Achievement that we can all use in our classrooms. And the other one is knowing the resources online. So things like NerdWallet, Bankrate.com, Motley Fool. There are amazing, amazing resources out there, and calculators. And so getting them really comfortable with using those kinds of resources. And the other thing is, if you partner with Junior Achievement or someone like that, is when I'm teaching my financial literacy course, I'll bring in subject matter experts in areas that I'm not that strong with. Again, I'm teaching at John Carroll, so it might be a little bit higher level, but I'll bring in somebody that just specializes in, the modern portfolio theory or things like that. So, if there's an area that you're not super comfortable with, maybe it's taxes or something like that, try to partner with other subject matter experts and have them come in and do that section for you.
Hello again. If I'm reading the audience's role correctly, we're talking high school data, talking about financial literacy and how we approach when we walk in a classroom. You know your classrooms. We might be LMI, but the dollar doesn't care. You might have high-income households in your classroom. The basics of money management doesn't change by virtue of how much money you have. The management is about how much money you keep. And so teaching our students to be comfortable with the dollar. I have this joke, and they know it. I will get you to move your foot if there is a penny on the floor. My students say, well, I don't pick up pennies. Well, when I showed them my deposit for $1,000 of rolled pennies, they were like, is that really how it works? That's really how it works. We do even games and activities called the shoebox challenge. They literally bring in a shoebox. I tape it with duct tape. We cut a hole in it. We give them their first seed dollar. Give them a certain amount of time, and then we call it reveal day. Everybody starts out with an even playing field. Whoever raises or saves the most money, we match it. And so giving kids where nobody matters, we even making it not a subject of who has the most, but who can get the most and keep the most. And doing exercises and not using our own scenarios. Because contrary, I'm blessed I don't look like where I've been, and then in some spaces I'm anointed because I've been there, right? And so recognizing the gifts we have, because my past qualifies my present. Had I not grown up with a single mom who taught grit and tenacity, I could sit here and say, oh, woe but me, but I tell my students, your excuses are pleasing to the presenter. I'm not interested. What are we doing next and now? And educators, when you get in these classrooms with our students, with your students, remember there was a time that you were that student. How could somebody have taught you better about money? If you don't have it mastered, what could they have said when you were in the 9th grade, 8th grade, 11th grade? Let me suggest, but stay away from the personal financial goals. Don't tell them I'm a 7-figure person, because you just lost them being able to relate with you. If golf is your game and they're barely making it into baseball because of the fees, don't use those points of reference because you become irrelevant. That's my thought.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very interesting. So my next question is for Adam and Felicia. Inclusive access to financial education is a significant challenge. For example, a next-gen personal finance report from 2020 found that while nearly 17% of students nationwide were required to take a personal finance class, yet only 3.9% of students from low-income schools shared that requirement. What are your respective districts and its educators doing to advance a more inclusive financial education?
So, I'm at Bedford High School, which is in the suburb of Cleveland. And what my school district is doing, I mentioned earlier that we have had our personal finance course for about 20 years, a little more than 20 years. So we started that because We found out that that was a class that was going to be needed. We wasn't sure when, but we did put that into action, wrote the curriculum, got it approved by the school board, and have been going strong ever since. Okay, some other things that we try to do is to make sure we use some activities that are interactive for our students. And so we want to do things like some of the stock market activities, stock market game. There's also the Real Money, Real World. I received a CD of that from, I think it's OSU Extension some years ago. And so that's hands-on for the students. It is a lot of preparation, but it is well worth it because the students are able to actually see how they can spend how they receive money, how they can pay out money, and then they have their unexpected expenses. And it makes them feel like this is actually happening to them. And so they know what we as adults encounter throughout our lives. So that helps them. So those are just a few things that we're doing at Bedford High School.
Yeah, I would echo that with what Felicia said. We're looking for a curriculum, and we talk about being more inclusive. We're looking for a curriculum as we move into this new course that does all the things Felicia said and builds strong habits of mind. But it's got to do more than that. You know, the last question, you know, Dr. Rice talked about cultural responsiveness. Got to have kids be able to see themselves in the curriculum. Financial literacy is no different than social studies, algebra, whatever, you know, U.S. history, whatever. That teacher is a gateway. That curriculum is a gateway where if they can see themselves, see how it connects with their life, you know, that's the difference maker. So it needs to be flexible. The simulations, the connections to career ed, all those pieces need to be there and tie together, but they need to be flexible for our teachers. Because our teachers know our kids best, and they're going to need some flexibility on how to execute this stuff. The second point I would bring up is, and this is a story of my life, by the way, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I am like, you know, the golfing example. I don't golf anymore because I was so bad at it, you know. But, you know, if you're with good golfers, you look better, right? Or maybe you look worse, I don't know. Maybe that's why I quit. Partnering with good people is really important. Akron Public Schools has partnered with Dr. Mulholland in the past, and it's been fantastic. JA, the Federal Reserve, EverFi, these are fantastic partners that help provide some of that stewardship, some of those ideas to really ensure that the students are getting, there's no gaps in the curriculum. And so that would be my other piece to a more equitable curriculum program, is to make sure you've got really good partners that care about your kids and your community. So yeah.
Thank you. My next question is going to be for all of the panelists. In your professional capacities, what instructional tools and insights have you seen work well when teaching financial literacy? And I think, Kim, you might have touched on it earlier, especially for new educators for starting out. And Kim, we'll start with you.
Yes, So the thing I always start with in my course, and that I just love, but everybody hates, is the B word, budget. And you don't have to call it a budget. I know I'm old and I still use that term, but expense tracker, cash flow, or something like that. And we all do it together. And so now, this doesn't have to be, I know these are younger kids, but if they mow the lawn for neighbors, or if they get an allowance for doing things, they can track their own. And just making sure they understand where their money's going. And if not, I have a lot of students that will partner with their parents because their parents have never done an actual budget before. And it's really eye-opening for them to see, oh my gosh, every time we go to Chipotle, mom and dad spend $60. And they have no idea that Chipotle costs that much to feed a family of 4 or whatever it is. So that is so important. And that's something that we do all semester long, is we track expenses and then I check in with them. And then I think, Barry, I stole this from you, was some questions at the end of the semester, like what was surprising to you, and there's different budget worksheets out there. I'd be happy to share the one I use, but and it's funny because it's kind of always the same thing. I never realized how much I spent on fast food, or I never realized that our electric bill was that much. And it's just becoming familiar with what's coming in and what's going out, and is there money left at the end, or if there isn't. And then that's where you kind of set them up for saying, okay, what do we need to do? Do we need to bring more in? Do we take on more yards in the neighborhood? Do we ask what other chores we can do around the house? Do mom and dad get a second job? And then how do we cut the expenses? And just getting them used to that. And then with whatever is left over down here, what are we going to do with that? Are we saving for that new iPhone? If so, how does compound interest play into our savings on that, or whatever is going to come from that? So that's my favorite. I also always print out a 1040 and I'll do my own. So if you use tax software, you're really not seeing how the 1040 actually works. So I make the kids do a 1040 and give them examples and things like that. That's always a good one. The stock market challenge and Junior Achievement does an amazing one. But the kids think the stock market is sexy. The 1040 in budgeting is not. But stocks are pretty cool. And so they really get into that. So I highly recommend incorporating that somehow.
In your professional capacity, what instructional tools and insights have you seen work well when teaching financial literacy, especially for new educators just starting up?
Breathe. That's the best thing you can do, is just breathe. And be okay that you don't have a master's in this, but you're working toward it. Because if you are transparent with your students, like I remember sliding in the halls of South High School in 1999, like, look, this is what I do, but my goal is to teach you how to do some of these smart money moves. Using their language also is important. I tell my students, instead of using that B word, I do have a B word. And I tell my students, your brand is your budget. They understand branding. They understand it. If your behavior is a reflection of your budget, that could be in grades, that could be in your new job. And so making things fun to be able to grasp and challenge the students. Don't charge them for what they don't know. And my best advice for the educator is breathe. You'll get through it. You'll even get better with your money as you teach students to get better with theirs. And there'll be levels to this. And don't be afraid to seek out a coaching partner, someone that has done this, that can help coach you into your excellence, just as you're doing the students. So my wisdom drops, breathe.
Yeah, I would echo all that. Here at the University of Akron, at the Barker Center, and Dr. Mulholland, and Dr. McGuth, got a lot of lessons. some of these lessons are hands-on lessons, very effective with our high school kids when they can actually touch it. You know, it's a simulation game, but they're, you know, looking, they're trying to understand a concept. And they're playing a small game involved with it that takes a class period. They really connect to that concept. So newer teachers or teachers first time teaching it. And there's a lot of good lessons out there to be able to find that are hands-on. The kids seem to like that a lot. You know, the other one too that I think is really important is, you know, we've talked about, or I've talked about a lot, they need to see themselves in the curriculum. So there's a piece of, we haven't talked a lot about this, but there's a real important piece to this financial literacy around entrepreneurship. And our world is changing, and our kids are changing, and I'm telling you, a side hustle is pretty cool. And that's another piece where our kids get to see themselves and be a part of what they're learning. So I think for new or newer teachers, or as we all go into this together as a learning community, I think those are, you know, leaning on what's there, especially the hands-on, and embracing and empowering things that our students connect to.
And I agree with everyone on the stage and everything that's been said, because that's what our students are looking for today. When you think about our kids and what they do, I always do this. You know, they have their cell phone in their hand. Their cell phone is very engaging to them. It attracts their attention. So that's what they're looking for. So we have to do the same thing. We have to look for activities that are going to be very engaging and that are going to be hands-on for them. And I think Next Generation Personal Finance does a very good job of that with their arcade games. And I played a few of them, and you know, it's like once you get started, you keep going. And then of course, you know, you want to beat the game. So you want to make sure that you come out on top, that you're making the most money. So just keep trying to make sure that you have activities, anything that's going to engage the student, so that and also that is related to what they're learning and where they can see how they can apply it in their lives.
Indeed, thank you all. I have 2 more questions, and then we're going to put the audience in the hot seat. So those of you that are texting or sleeping, wake up and put your phones down and be prepared. So the next question. The teaching profession itself is often called a gateway out of poverty profession, as education majors are often disproportionately first-generation college students when compared to other majors. This means that many of our nation's K-12 teachers have had and still have rough financial roads that make them feel inadequate and unqualified to teach the subject of financial literacy. What advice would you give educators as they navigate their own money trauma and this imposter syndrome?
That's a really good question. I think a couple things, and Sean said it, is transparency. So I do get personal with my students. So we went through bankruptcy when I was 10, lost our house, lost our pets, lost everything. And so I am very honest and upfront with my students that, you know, it was a struggle. Student loans, I did all of the bad things. I, you know, ran to that credit card table when you first walk into the student union your freshman year. I did it all. So if there was a mistake to be made, I did it. And so I'm very open about that with my students the first day, because I want to take away any stigma or any, but then it's also that, you know, I'm not going to be able to answer every question that you ask. I keep a notebook though on the podium when I'm teaching, and they know if they ask me a question I can't answer, I'm going to write it down and get the answer for them. And I think too, just going through the process, like when I was talking about budgeting, go through the process yourself, whether you're doing it with them or you want to do it before the class starts. Go through that process, do your own cash flow, do your own balance sheet, play around with some time value calculations and see what you need to be saving for retirement. Look at your own STRS or PERS or whatever you have and get kind of a feeling for that. And then understand what your investments are, because you're probably going to be touching on stocks and bonds and ownership versus, you know, lending, things like that. Understand what's available in the banking system. Bankrate.com is a tremendous resource for things like that. So nobody knows there's a situation better than their own. So going through it yourself with all of the topics that are going to be covered in the semester is going to give you a really good idea of how everything works.
And I have to comment about the credit card. I know when I was a freshman in college in the student union, and they had those little credit cards, you know, and it was $500. I had arrived, ladies and gentlemen, because I was approved for the $500 credit card. So yeah, I noticed we don't have that anymore. But usually the freshman college week, you know, when they come, it will be all in the student union where you can sign up. We don't have that anymore, thank goodness. Yeah.
I would say that one of the hardest things to do is feel like you can teach something you haven't mastered, but you really can't. And for any educator, remember my background, I'm a licensed credit strategist, and you're probably like, what does that have to do with financial education? Credit is simply unseen money. So if you can master money, you can master credit. So one of the things I would suggest, bless you, is that we all take a look at our credit reports. www.annualcreditreport.com. That is government run. It is your 3 major credit reports. Pull your report. It doesn't impede on your credit score. Nobody else sees it but you. Because if you know where you need to work back into to get your story clearer, you'll feel better. And it's like most times, I will say this to all of you, you are probably better than you think, but out of fear, we don't even go check. We're just like, yeah, the bills are coming, we'll get to it later. They're calling me, I'll answer it later. This is a great time to answer it because Dr. Magoo and Taylor, they have access to me. If you get stuck on something you saw, I'm a real safe space. I'd rather you be better because if you're better, you'll feel better about what you're showing your students. And so sometimes just know where your work is so that you'll know what to work toward so that as you're teaching it, there is no imposter syndrome because broke doesn't care what you look like, right? And anyone that's never been broke, just wait. It's coming because there's a time and a season for all things. The best time is learn with your students and whatever you do, don't put on the imposter. Find out how you can be everything that you're pretending to be, that it is real.
Okay, so for first-time teachers, and I can say for my generation, and I do come from a family of teachers, all work for Akron schools, Akron U. So, but from my generation, I was one of the first. My parents did not have a college degree. They both graduated from high school. So, from my family, immediate family, I am a first generation graduate. And so I know I made a lot of mistakes. And as Dr. Wrice said and everyone else, coming here to Akron U, they had those tables out. We were busy signing up for credit cards. So, and we learned from the School of Hard Knocks. Okay? But I advise to new teachers to read. I'm a reader. I love to read. And Dave Ramsey, I have a few of his books. I have some of the lessons that he's created for high school students and have used it with some of my students. It's a great resource. Some of you may not know, but Senator, I think she's still a senator, Elizabeth Warren, she has a book that she wrote with her daughter, amazing book. And it gives me a different perspective of financial literacy that I can take back to my students and share with them, okay, Dave Ramsey says this and Elizabeth Warren says this, you know, and show them the different ways. Now you select the way that's going to work best for you. I like to give them options and for them to see that there's so much information out there. So new teachers, just read and use those resources, and then what has been said before, use your own personal information. You don't have to go into detail, but the kids, they love it when you relay to them or relate to them. And you're opening up and sharing your stories and what you went through financially with them.
Yeah, I don't know how much more to add. Such great advice. I do know that if you feel like you're an imposter, it's important to remember that we never know what's in the mind of somebody else. And that goes for the people that should be first on the list, which is our students. We don't know their socioeconomic health, their financial health of that family. You could be teaching in Hudson, and mom or dad could have a $100,000 credit card debt, you know, for all we know. You could be teaching in East Akron, and you know, mom and dad have great jobs, they've saved, they've worked hard, their credit score is great. You don't know. And so being mindful to respect every student for who they are and not make assumptions, I think helps with that imposter piece. But then the other piece is it's like the airplane and the oxygen comes down, and if you don't put it on yourself first, you know, many of us, whether we work for university or we're a student at university or we work for the Akron Public Schools or another school district, we actually have some financial literacy, financial planning as a part of our benefits in some way. That, you know, reaching out and talking to someone about it, I know has been very helpful for me, because they've said the same things that others have said on this panel, which is, hey, start here, do this first. And so just reaching out, I think, helps with that imposter piece as well.
Thank you. One more question for the panel. What was the best money advice you were ever given? Yes, I got it here.
Dr. Mulholland's going to laugh at me right now. I say this on the first day of class, and I say it every day until the end. If you don't listen to anything else I say, listen to this. When you get your first job, start your 401k or 403b or whatever it is as soon as you become eligible, and contribute at least enough to get the full company match.
Best personal financial advice I was given is no is a complete sentence.
Yes. We did it. We did it. There's always another house. which in the real estate, when you're going to be a buyer, don't get so enamored on that house that you have to have that house. If it's not in your budget and you don't feel the value's there will be another house that may even be better. And so that applies to, I don't know, clothes, automobiles, you name it. There will always be another house. Best piece of advice anybody ever gave me.
And my best piece of advice is the same as Kim. Start your 403B. And that's it. It's the best.
Thank you. At this time, we are going to, first of all, let's just give this panel a round of applause. We're going to open up the floor to the questions of the audience, but I don't know about you, but I wish, and I hope my colleague, Dr. Crawford, was taking notes, and if not, I'm going to write her up after this, because I learned so much. I learned so much just sitting here today, but I couldn't write because I had to ask questions. But we're going to open up the questions, the Q&A to the audience, so please raise your hand. I think Dr. Magooth, do you have a mic over there? Okay, one over there. So don't all raise your hand at the same time. Okay.
I'm Andrea. This is my 12th year teaching personal finance, moving from middle school to the high school. I usually do a Google survey with them to kind of know their audience, but I'm always looking for new questions. So I always get, I always ask the question, how long have you been in the district? Have you moved from multiple schools? Because we get a lot of transient students. So I ask those questions if they know what a high school grad makes, what a high school dropout makes, those type of questions. What kind of questions would you put on there to find more about your audience?
Oftentimes ask my students to tell me what they're aspiring to become.
Yeah, what do you want to do with your life? Tell me about your family. What makes you tick? If you could start a side job, what might you be interested in? What are your hobbies that you might be interested in? I want to know each and everything about them as much as I can, so I can make those connections with every kid.
And where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
I'm Sarah, by the way. How do you combat or try to combat some of the predatory lending things that are ingrained in certain cultures that are viewed as being totally normal, but yet are keeping them in poverty?
Yeah, I mean, we spend quite a bit of time on banking deserts, underbanked, unbanked, and solutions to that, and payday loans, and we spend a lot of time now on if anybody has a credit card, it puts on there how long would it take to pay it off if you make the minimum payment. So I think it's gotten a lot better. We don't have the tables in the student union anymore. I think we've gotten better, but it's talking about solutions and talking about second chance banks versus payday loans and predatory lenders. And there's there is a website, I can't think of it, but I can look it up if anybody wants it, but there is a website out there on second chance banks in Ohio. It's a lot of credit unions and things like that, but offering those as solutions to the payday loans. Oh, and the other thing is do an exercise on if you borrow $1,000 and your interest is 29%, what does that grow to if you make the minimum payment? That's a really important hands-on exercise for every class, because that'll let them see that that's going to balloon up to a number that they're never going to be able to pay off.
I think that's really important too. They need to see, and there's so many loan calculators that are free. You can just go and drop it in and then change the number of payments, and students can see that. There's a nice connection, by the way, interconnectivity with financial literacy and economics. You use the B word. For me, it was always the P word, profit. And as profit versus value. And as soon as students kind of connect with those concepts, get those competitive juices going. Do you really want to give them your money? It makes a difference when they understand, like Adam Smith says, it's not by the benevolence of the butcher that, you get your food, your food on the table. It's people out for things. And that's a real world reality that, lots of different ways to show it to them. And I would show it to them. I would show it to them and let them know because it's life-changing. Dr. Mulholland?
I'll just add, if you're looking to deal with paying down debt and how to do that, Utah State University has a website called powerpay.org, and they will take you through an exercise where you can look at credit debts and how to pay it down the fastest way and the least expensive way, and it'll deal with things like the predatory lending to understand some of that.
And if I could just add something else to it, when I hear my students talk about predatory lending, I think about identity theft. And that could be part of your financial literacy curriculum, that when you hear predatory practice, they could be the next victims without intent. We have parents who use their kids' names, be it in banking, on utility bills. Let's talk about what really is facing some of our students. So when you think of create an exercise, an activity that talks about the payday loan, but talk about the identity theft because it usually happens very close to home. How do they protect themselves and why they would and why you don't ever want to be a victim of this predatory practice because it puts you in a real strong place of being an actual predator, intentionally or unintentionally, yourselves.
All right, thank you. So I know that a lot of educators here are teaching financial literacy, so I'm assuming all those topics. But we also know that students here in high school, graduate or going to college. First of all, how many of them are actually thinking of college and getting an education? Do they know how much what the cost of living is going to be, where they're going to live, and some of them might not want to get a college degree. So first of all, talking to them about colleges itself. And on top of it, so they decide to go to college now, what about loans? Because a lot of them, when they finish high school, or finish college, they end up with maybe huge loans because they didn't know enough before starting. So I think getting to, for them to understand about colleges, FAFSA, loans, what are the interest rates, all of that should be tied into the financial literacy, other topics like credit, debt, like you said, also identity theft, everything. So it's like a whole umbrella of stuff which they should be aware of. And I'm just kind of saying because, that's one of the things.
And I can say that that is something that is a part of the curriculum, talking about college. And when I started teaching the course, I would have the students do like not a personality test, but a test for them to determine what career they would have. They would research that career, answer a few questions. We would talk about college. They'd research college, maybe 2 or 3 colleges, find out the cost of the college. We would look at the cost of books and boarding, all of that. And then we would move on. Okay, now I want you to take the yearly income for this career, and we're going to use that as your yearly income. And then we would go into creating our budgets and doing our income statement. So that's just one thing that I did, but it is a part of the curriculum with with college and the loans and careers. That's all.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ina, and Joy and I are probably the outcasts here because we're not teachers. We come from financial institutions, and we partner with a lot of our local school districts in financial literacy. So my question would be, what would you like to see your local financial institutions bring into the classroom to assist you with this?
Putting bank accounts in the building.
One thing I would like to see, and I actually tried this a few times, is for the students to be able to take a tour of the bank. I wanted the students to see like the safe deposit box area, the vault, and so we were not allowed to do that. But I think being able to tour the bank and actually see what's done at the bank, the duties of a teller, you know, because we just give the teller our money. Well, what happens after that? We know that the money goes into our accounts. We see it in our, you know, on our statement and all, but what happens after that? And I think that's something I would like to see.
Hi, in response, and just a comment to what Ms. Murphy-Williams stated, I'm a graduate of the Cleveland Municipal School District, and years ago, when I went to the schools, we did open up bank accounts in 3rd grade. The banks came to our schools, and it was back then, what's now the bank now. I'm sorry, I don't think I can hear it. It was Society Bank, and now they're Right, the name has changed. It's gone. It went from Society and Ameritrust, and it was Cleveland Trust. But when I was in 3rd grade, they came to our schools, and we opened up bank accounts. I think it was our parents had to send us to school with maybe $3 or $4, but that's something that CMSD did, you know, back in the 70s and 80s. So thank you for bringing that up, because I brought that up. I have an after-school STEM program, and that's something that I often bring up to some of my colleagues in Cleveland, that's something that we need to bring back throughout the state. So thank you.
And I will give a shout out to one of the banks that I do know does do that, and that's one of our partners. Citizens Bank will show up in your buildings. And so I would just like to see other banks do it, but if anyone needs a bank to show up in their building, I do know they do that or have for us.
Good. Well, this concludes our panel. Let's give them again a round of applause. And I would like to turn the floor back over to you.
Thank you. Can we get a round of applause for Dr. Rice as well for facilitating? All right, so our day is almost done, so we have one more breakout session that starts at 1:30, and that will conclude at 2:30. And after that, our day is done today, so you will just head out right from that session. We're not meeting back in here again today. Tomorrow we have an amazing agenda set up. So Dr. Mulholland will be kicking off our morning with our morning keynote session. Linda McKeon will actually be speaking about Senate Bill 1 and what the licensure validation looks like over at lunch. And many of the programs and organizations that were mentioned today on this panel, they will be having breakout sessions tomorrow as well, like Junior Achievement, Federal Reserve as well. So great day tomorrow. A few more reminders that we talked about earlier. We do have the optional grad credit course immediately after our session. So that starts at 2:30 in room 316. And then we have the walking tour later this afternoon as well. But I will be lingering here if you have any questions. Dr. Maguth will be here as well. But with that, we'll go ahead and break for our last exhibitor break, and then you can go to your breakout room starting at 1:30. Thank you.